that title card. It's the most complicated thing in the world. You have to click it. You have to remember it. It's so hard. Hey! Happy Sunday, friends and lovers, and thank you for joining us. Peace and love. Peace and love. Thank you. This is 5 Minutes with Robert Nasir. I am Robert Nasir. Amy Nasir is Amy Nasir. You are you, man, and it's all good.
And we are all together.
We are all together. I am me, and you are me, and we are we. And
yes, and we're all wearing flowery, fluffy hats today, aren't we? Aren't we?
If you're going to San Francisco, be sure to wear some flowers in your hair. No, it's Peace and Love Sunday. Today is Sunday, May 8th, 2022, the 128th day of this, your best year yet, man. 237 days left to make it your best year. 231 shopping days until Christmas.
Man.
Peace and love. Peace and love. We got to talk about peace and love, and we'll tell you why. On this date, this is just a starter. This wasn't even in the script, but it's so cool. On this date, 1945, some of you already know, hey, it's VE Day, Victory in Europe. This is the day we won the war, World War II. Okay, Japan was still left over, so that's why it's just VE and not VJ Day. But yes, this date, 1945, the US, the UK, America, and Great Britain celebrate victory in Europe. Japan surrendered later that summer on August 15th, 1945. Surrender documents famously signed on September 2nd. 1945, the end of World War II. A great, great day. The 8th day of May spelled the day when German troops throughout Europe finally laid down their arms. In Prague, Germans surrendered to their Soviet antagonists. Our big mistake, letting the Soviets be our ally in that.
Yeah, not cool.
Yeah, after the latter had lost more than 8,000 soldiers. Who the hell cares? And the Germans considerably more. In Copenhagen and Oslo, at Karlshorst near Berlin, in northern Latvia, on the Channel Island of Sark. The German surrender was realized in a final ceasefire. This day, May 8th, 1945. Also, a happy birthday to the late, great Robert Johnson. Something I don't even know if I knew, but Robert Johnson was actually the first member of the 27 Club. If you know, in rock and roll, the 27 Club is a list of all the musicians, an outrageous number of musicians, a spooky number of musicians who passed away at the age of 27. Robert Johnson only lived from 1911, this date was his birthday, to 1938. Actually, I love this. This is a watercolor of the most famous, of course, photograph of Robert Johnson. We picked this up. Amy picked this up. We picked this up in New Orleans.
New Orleans.
Purchased directly from the artist.
Yeah, it was an artist that drew in this kind of style where if anybody has ever been to New Orleans, say like in July or August, it's extraordinarily humid and everything has condensation on it. It's just dripping with sweat. And so these are watercolors that were kind of like dripping with the New Orleans humidity.
Yes.
I kind of like that.
I apologize for the reflections in the glass. I swear that was matte glass on there, but the last minute photograph is rough. Still, happy birthday. Yeah. Happy birthday to Robert Johnson. Speaking of musicians, it's also Ricky Nelson's birthday. Another man who didn't live nearly long enough. 45 years he made it.
Oh,
so
wow.
Ricky Nelson, born on this day in 1940, and that means it's time. If you haven't seen it in a while, or God forbid you haven't seen it at all, go out and watch Rio Bravo. You wouldn't think a young pop musician starring in a film would be credible, but he does a great job. It's a great film. John Wayne, Rio Bravo, you need to, and of course Dean Martin, you need to see that film. It's also Joe Bonamassa's birthday. Great guitarist, great blues guitarist. See, Robert Johnson started the blues. He created the blues. Mm-hmm. And fortunately, there are artists who aren't that much like Robert Johnson, but who have enormous respect and have turned it into their own. One of those being Joe Bonamassa. It is his birthday today as well. We'll get back to another blues musician with enormous respect for Robert Johnson in a moment. Today is also...
Yeah? I'm playing with the thing because my hand is in here.
You can see yourself on the edge there. Yeah, I should have probably, put the black background on there. There, much more professional.
There you go.
Sorry about people listening to the podcast. This is all video stuff we're talking about.
It's the magic of video.
It's the magic of video. That's right. Here, let's bring us back here so that we can say, because you see the chapeau, the hat, this beautiful hat. Happy Mother's Day to all of the mothers out there, or anybody who had a mother, or anybody who was a mother, or anybody who knew a mother. And I think we all had mothers. Some of us just didn't know them. But it's a happy Mother's Day.
Yeah,
Love to all the mothers out there.
Yeah, this is more of a springtime hat rather than a Mother's Day hat. But I just bought it today from Greenfield Village, and it's quite springy and very.
It is adorable. It is charming on a Mother's Day. Well, you did receive. You have your Mother's Day card and a Mother's Day plant.
I have a plant. Hello. Okay, tell us, plant. What would you like to say about life? I like sunshine a lot. Okay, there you go. The plant just talked for those who are not seeing this.
Yes, that was the plant, totally, and not Amy at all. And finally, I did mention there's another musician with great respect. Plays the blues, but in a way that's not at all like the blues. Great respect for Robert Johnson, and that is Jack White. Jack White of the White Stripes. Jack White, born here in Motown, although now Third Man Records has its main studio in Nashville, still has a studio up here in Motown, and a storefront, and a record pressing plant. Why do I mention Jack White? Not only was he a great fan and student of Robert Johnson, but he did write one of the Coca-Cola theme songs. And it's funny because it was a great video, which you would expect from anybody who was in the White Stripes. It's actually a Japanese artist who produced this amazing video, Coca-Cola commercial. The commercial had the title, What Goes Around Comes Around, if you're looking for that. Title of the song was, now why am I forgetting the title of the song? Love is the Truth. Love is the Truth. If you're a White Stripes fan or a Jack White fan, he released a bunch of acoustic recordings a couple of years ago. That song is on the Acoustic Recordings album, redone as an acoustic song. I love the television commercial version. Trouble is, it's very hard to find. So I have linked to a shortened version of it that's available on YouTube in the show notes. You'll see that right after the show. I've linked to the longer version on Daily Motion, but it's really low resolution. Point is, it's National Coke Day. What do you mean it's National Coke Day? Is that something they made up to sell more, so Big Coke can sell more Coca-Cola? But it turns out this is the day in 1886 when the first glass of Coca-Cola was sold. So if you got them, crack one open. Oh, I meant to have one, but I'm still finishing up my coffee here. I do have Coca-Cola in the refrigerator.
Just pretend. I
know that sugar is Satan to certain low-carb types. I apologize for that, but not really. I love my Coca-Cola.
I don't know if anybody heard me open up that invisible can of Coca-Cola.
Yes. Well, I have bottles, but same thing. Close enough. So, in a happy National Coca-Cola Day, have a Coke and a smile. I also linked to, as cute as Jack White's commercial is, the best one, right? Tell us in the chat. I won't even tell you. Do you remember the greatest Coca-Cola commercial of all time? See if you can remind us what that was. Link will be in the show notes, which aren't posted until the end of the show.
The one with the polar bear or the one with Santa?
Oh, the polar bear and the polar bear Santa. That was awfully good, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. But no, because I'm thinking of music. I'm thinking of songs written for or not written. I don't know if it was written for a Coca-Cola, but used in a Coca-Cola commercial. Music is on my mind. In fact, what are we listening to this week? Anything exciting from Amy on what we're listening to this week? Still a lot of true crime?
No. Actually, I've been too busy to listen to things.
Busy week. It has been that. Incidentally, when we get to the what are we listening to this week, feel free to share in the chat if there's something you think that the Robert Nasir, Amy Nasir audience should hear.
Yeah, if you have a favorite podcast or something like that, or favorite lecture or a TED Talk or whatever, please send it our way. That would be great.
Yes. Music's good too, although that's a little harder to translate, to connect to. But good anyway. What we're listening to, well, first of all, we did 2 podcasts, as we often did. And one of them was on Roe versus Wade, and one of them was not on Roe versus Wade. So the Roe versus Wade one, I think, is worth a listen because it's a different slant than everybody else, and Lord knows everybody else was talking about it, a different slant than everybody else was making. In our episode entitled Ends Means Sex and Roe versus Wade. That was our episode of Life on Earth this week. Link in the show notes. The one that was not on Roe versus Wade was our weekly show with James Valliant on Fridays, in which we discuss Leonard Peikoff's works. And this one was on his talk that he gave right in the middle of the 4-year period when he was doing talk shows. And he gave a talk entitled Triumphs and Tribulations of a Radio Talk Show Host. And that was good. And it was good. I thought we did a damn fine job. James certainly did. Worth a listen. And finally, on the podcast side of things. And again, we're going to keep tying all this together because Yaron Brook gave a talk. He's touring England on the roots of war. And we're all very concerned about the war in Ukraine and the bad guys in Russia. And make no mistake, they are the bad guys, despite what a few crazies out there are saying. And Yaron's talk, The Roots of War, was based on an essay that Ayn Rand wrote entitled The Roots of War. Oh, okay, that's pretty correct, pretty direct. In The Roots of War, Ayn Rand wrote, laissez-faire capitalism is the only social system based on the recognition of individual rights, and therefore the only system that bans force from social relationships.
That sounds good.
By the nature of its basic principles and interests, it is the only system fundamentally opposed to war. Now, I know there are people out there, close quote for a moment, I know there are people out there who think, well, capitalism is just people being greedy and wanting stuff, and therefore they act like imperialists. They go out there and conquer and destroy countries. And the amazing thing is you can point to all the wars the United States has been in pretty much ever, but especially like in my lifetime. And even the wars that I don't think were justified, I don't think any of you will think were justified. Wars we should not have been in. You know, the war in Korea, the war in Vietnam, even the military actions in Iraq, which certainly after 9/11 was not the right country to attack, even though there were countries that needed to be attacked. What did we fight for?
Good God, y'all.
Yeah,
Sorry.
what is it good for? When we left Korea, when we left Vietnam, we left with our tail between our legs. But even if we had won those wars, what would we have left with? In theory, at least, we were fighting for certain political ends, keeping the communists out, keeping those countries from attacking allies of ours. Same thing in Iraq. People say we were fighting for oil. We didn't get any oil. We didn't take the country over. We didn't even take the oil fields over. We have never been a nation of conquest. So, anyway, back to Ayn Rand. She says, by the nature of the basic principles and interests of capitalism. Remember, by capitalism, we don't mean, oh, a lot of rich people with a lot of money. What we mean is political economic freedom. Government leaves you alone when it comes to capital, when it comes to finance, when it comes to economics. By the nature of its basic principles and interests, it is the only system fundamentally opposed to war. Men who are free to produce, but have no incentive to loot, they have nothing to gain from war, and a great deal to lose. You know, even, close quote, even the late Rush Limbaugh was smart enough to realize the purpose of war is to kill people and break things. Now, that was an oversimplification, but it makes the point. War does not produce. War does not create. War does not make anything good happen. Even wars of conquest are ultimately self-destructive to the nations that engage in them. And that's just to make the point. And Yaron gets into the reasons behind this, the roots of war, which are in, again, a refusal of having a free society. The failure of adopting laissez-faire capitalism, socialism, collectivism, the altruist ethics, the ethics of self-sacrifice. And it's interesting because, and here's why I had to bring it up, last year, Yaron Brook was on Michael Shermer's podcast. You know, Michael Shermer, the modern scientist, I put him in the same category as Steven Pinker and Matt Ridley and the so-called rational optimists, the modern rationalists. And on that show, Yaron Brook talked about capitalism in just these terms. He even raised the idea of war, and this is well before Russia attacked Ukraine, with the litmus test that others have used as well, which is if it's a just war, one question you should be willing to ask yourself, that politicians should be willing to ask themselves is this a war I would send my own son to fight? Is this a war that I would tell an honest young man, go risk your life for this? This is worth fighting for. The measure of an honest war. Mamas, don't let your babies grow up to be fodder. And so on Mother's Day, the day after the Ann Arbor Water Lantern Festival, I can't resist talking a little bit about war, but even more about peace and love. It's Mother's Day, and mothers should not be sending their sons off to fight unjust, irrational wars. Last night, what did we do last night?
We went to a hippy-dippy water lantern festival.
Oh my gosh.
And it says, number 1, experience the wonder. And
the wonder.
The wonder. Enjoy the atmosphere.
Well,
and
for you watching on video here, let me see if I can give you a little bit of the wonder here. Let's go there.
Yeah, this is a time we can come together, love one another, and heal ourselves. Reflect on your life, share your dreams, and feel the peace all around all around you. Yeah, just like that.
So what stood out about this? Okay, first I need to explain, because I had no idea going into this. What on earth is a water lantern festival? We're going to leave a bunch of trash in the lake? And it turns out it's essentially the biggest beach party I've ever been to. On a big lake in Milford, Michigan, a suburb of Detroit. And it's one of the metropolitan parks of the area. And you can see from the pictures, this is early on. The place wasn't even full up yet at that time. But it's peace and love. Enjoy life. Be kind. Create light. All of these really hippy-dippy sentiments. And I'm thinking it's 2022. Are there still hippies out there? Well,
yeah.
It wasn't really about hippies. These were just normal people. These are your neighbors. These are just reasonable, cheerful, good people. And it's funny because I have made the point on this show and elsewhere, when people kind of lose their sense of benevolence, they start thinking that people aren't good, people are rotten, people suck. The reason why there's so many problems in the world is because everybody's lost their way. There aren't any moral people anymore. And I've been the first person to say, no, you go out in the malls, you go out in the stores, you go to the restaurants, you go to the coffee shops, and you meet all these good people, and people you trust, people you do business with, people you can count on. But it was interesting to go to the biggest beach party I've ever been to and see all of these good people just having a good time. Now you can see this at a beach if you go to any beach. But, over COVID, it was even kind of hard to get to beaches unless you were in Florida or one of the states where it was not such a challenge. It was great, and it was about peace and love, and there were a lot of hippy-dippy sentiments written on a lot of these lanterns. I think you probably saw what was written on my lantern there was kind of hippy-dippy, kind of hippy-dippy there. If you get a chance to go to one of these things and you think, I don't know, man, that's I think Robert's going a little too far with the hippy-dippy stuff there. If you get a chance to go to one of these, I'm telling you, it's a peace and love beach party. It's just a good time with good people. And I came away from it thinking, people are even better than I thought they were. People are awesome. Now, I know that the kind of people you worry about, the kind of people who aren't awesome, don't go to water lantern festivals. But I'm telling you, there are thousands of people here. And they're all good. And you could walk up, it's fun. They had a scavenger hunt. It was a piece of paper, and you know how scavenger hunts work. You have to find all the things on the scavenger hunt. And then you turn it in at the end of the night, and they have a raffle for giving away prizes.
So one of the questions was, or one of the assignments was to find somebody wearing a hat and sunglasses, and in which you saw in one of the photos there, I was wearing a hat and sunglasses. So I didn't know it was one of the questions. Some a random person and her daughter, this mother and daughter, came up to me and said, "Hey, can I get your name for the scavenger hunt?" And I'm like, okay. it took me a second to catch on, but yeah, I gave my name, and they were appreciative, and everybody was very nice. And I mean, there were people of all types around. I'll tell you, my impression of it was that you had a whole bunch of families, multiple generations, little, babies, up to elderly, and I think some of the themes of some of the people being there were to commemorate a loved one who died, or even to have some visibility with regard to a terminal illness. Or going through cancer, hopefully it's not terminal, or something along those lines. It wasn't quite like that. It wasn't like one of these 5Ks, for cancer research kind of things. But it had that kind of vibe that life was finite, that people were going to try their darndest to enjoy themselves and their loved ones while they're here. There were even some lanterns that I saw that said, love yourself and respect yourself, and crazy things like that,
Yes.
So yeah, it had a real kind of self-help vibe, and it was good, and everybody was very cheerful. Children were running around, playing with the little bubbles, making bubbles in the air, and it was just really
we
fun.
walked over to the playground at the end. I brought my chalk. I did some chalk art because the kids were already doing chalk art. I wasn't defiling the sidewalks any more than the little children were. Incidentally, in the chat, Carrie says New Edition had not one but two Coke commercials in the 1980s. If you have any questions about New Edition, she is the person to ask. She knows more about it, more about the band than you will ever forget. And John imagines being there and the exchange he would have, apparently, because he says, "You are amazing. Get away from me, you hippie." It's the funniest thing, because I joke about that, especially in music. Some of you may know I'm a bit of a musician, and in the cover bands, bar bands, it's kind of divided up between the rock musicians, and that includes hard rock and heavy metal and all that. And then the punk rock and new wave crowd, the 80s bands, all the cool bands from the 80s and the late 70s. And then the hippy-dippy types. And somehow, probably because I keep volunteering for it, I get lumped in with the hippy-dippy crowd. But, I know John and other folks have a different idea of what a hippie is than me. When I think of hippies, I don't think of the dirty, smelly, watermelon passing, Cocoa Puff throwing hippies of the Apollo and Zeus lecture. Apollo and Zeus. I got Apollo Zeus in the chat on my mind here. Excuse me, the Apollo and Dionysus lecture that Ayn Rand gave when she talked about the Woodstock Festival and how a lot of us have an idealized version of what that festival was, but if you read the actual news stories, it was the worst idea of what a hippie is. And so I should probably stop identifying myself as an ally of the hippies, because like some of us have an idealized version of whatever our favorite period of history was. I don't think my idea of what hippies were is really what hippies were.
Yeah,
but that's why I tend to be, peace and love, man.
Yeah, there are some ideas in the, this whole kind of hippie movement, or however, that focuses vaguely on the idea of collectivism, which I'm sure none of us objectivists and chickens will appreciate. They say things like, come together as one world. Let's come together as one, and all this stuff. And I would say that the most generously benevolent interpretation of that would mean, let's all come together to recognize our nature as cognitive and volitional human beings who can actually choose the good and choose virtue. And let's all get along under the system of laissez-faire capitalism and respecting each other's individual rights. Yay! That's that I can get behind.
There's so many lessons that I took from and again, in the hippie days I was this tall, but the 70s carried a lot of that forward, and I sort of came of age then, graduated in 81, and so, yeah, a lot of those themes from the hippies, to me, they're true because I don't bring the baggage with me. So, when they say, yeah, we're all the same, man, no, we're not all the same, except we actually do have common denominators in our rational faculty and our desire to interact with people as traders, and you see how that works.
Right. We all have the commonality that we all value to the extent that we do.
Yes. Incidentally, and I'm going back a little bit in the chat to try to catch up, Apollo Zeus says Jack White is a Robert Nasir fan. I did not say that, but I have been on stage with his brother. Okay, we were on the same bill with Jack's brother, who, his brothers, some of them are musicians. And, one of them was part of our circle of friends for a bit.
Yeah, Leo.
Leo Gillis.
Yep.
Jack White picked up Meg White's name. His last name was originally Gillis. Leo Gillis is a very interesting musician. Easily as dynamic as his brother. Unfortunately, didn't achieve the same degree of success, but he was great fun to be on the same bill with.
So I don't think anybody has guessed your favorite or what you consider to be the most important Coca-Cola commercial out there. I don't think anyone's guessed that yet, but we do have Lori on Facebook. She says she posts something that I guess Elon Musk said in April.
Yeah, I saw that.
Next, I'm buying Coca-Cola to put the cocaine back in.
As you know, as an advocate of laissez-faire capitalism, I am not for the prohibition of drugs.
Right.
Because I think an exception can be made for people under 18. I'm not sure. I know, of course, it's a joke and it's not really going to happen, but it was interesting to me because if I was ever going to be into drugs, that would have been my drug of choice.
Not mine.
And I won't...
Makes me vomit.
Sorry. I never had that problem. But no, people know I don't even hardly drink anymore, so I just found it amusing.
My only experience with that kind of drug was Tylenol with codeine, and it just didn't agree with me.
No. Whole different enema there. Whole different thing. And then also Jim Ashley reminds us the floating lantern events in Japan.
Yeah.
Like the one he saw there are, he says, for commemorating lost loved ones. There was some of that. That was great fun. Yes. I should have put the video. Oh, man, I should have prepared that for this episode. They did have, it's a beach party, so there was a DJ there. And at first I thought, this is kind of a Zen yoga kind of thing. I don't know if I would even want music. But I have never been there before. Now that I know what it's like, I'm like, I can see why they had music. And it was a mix of, the kind of club stuff you would hear, everything from the 60s to the 2020s. Kind of cool. And they would occasionally have announcements in between songs. And at one point they stopped. And they opened up the mic. And they said, anybody wants to come up if you have a message for your friends, your family, or a shout out or a memorial that you want to give. And so some kids came up, encouraged children to do this. And would say, hi to their family. I love you, Mom. Happy Mother's Day. A couple people said something about people who had passed away, and they were doing lanterns in memorial or memoriam in memory of the people who had passed away. So I went up there and gave my shout out, and I'll post that on Facebook if anybody wants to see that.
Yeah,
if I can get Amy to give me the video.
Yeah, no, I'll send it to Robert, and it'll be up on the 5 Minutes with Robert Nasir and probably your wall as well, Robert.
Yes. So Jim, you're absolutely right. I'm sure they do that in Japan because they certainly did some of that last night as well. It was super sweet.
Yes. So the favorite Coca-Cola commercial, what is it?
Favorite Coca-Cola commercial was, I'd like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony. Everybody knows that one. Come on, except I'm sure some of you weren't born at the time. Buy the world a Coke. And keep it company. Of course, when they released the song on the radio, those weren't the lyrics. They took out the Coca-Cola part. But yes, of course. And you had all these people standing on this big, beautiful, grassy hill, and they all start holding hands, and now they're all holding hands in a line, and it's all peace and love and beautiful, and everybody has... Actually, I can't remember if they were all holding hands, because some of them were holding bottles of Coca-Cola. How do you hold hands in a line and hold a Coke? Now I've got to watch the commercial again. There's a link in the show notes to that. So you can check it out as well and find out how did they pull that one off. I did post a link also to the Ayn Rand Lexicon entry on love. In fact, I'm going to cut right to the chase and go to my Post-it note for the week,
Oh.
which says, there you go, love is the expression of one's values. Except you see the ellipsis there, the ... because the quote is actually longer than that. So I've got one here with a little more of the quote there. There's the quote. Love is the expression of one's values. The greatest reward you can earn for the moral qualities you have achieved in your character and person. Except I still have an ellipsis on there because that's still not even the whole quote. Let's see if I can get the whole quote up on the screen here. Nope, not that one. Boy, I need a producer. That's what I need. We need to hire Daniel to come in on Sunday nights and do all the technical stuff. We'll fly him in from Slovakia and have him do that. Love is the expression of one's values. Okay, I fit that on the Post-it note. The greatest reward you can earn for the moral qualities you have achieved in your character and person. Okay, I fit that on the second one. The emotional price paid by one man for the joy he receives from the virtues of another. It's an interesting thing about Ayn Rand quotes is just how exact they are. Because when you first read this, love is the expression of one value. Well, love isn't an expression. It's not something you do. It's something you feel, because love is an emotion. But then you keep reading. The greatest reward you can earn. Oh, okay, well, a feeling is something you can earn. That makes sense. For the moral qualities you have achieved in your character and person. Okay, but then she says the emotional price paid by one man for the joy feeling your emotions is a price you pay, and that brings in the virtue of justice. And I just love that this is true on so many levels. So my Post-it note for the week is a simple reflection on the fact that love is the expression of one's values, the greatest reward you can earn for the moral qualities you have achieved in your character and person. You know, we did an episode called Unconditional Love. And the whole point I wanted to make in that episode, and I think I made it well, if I do say so myself, and I do, was that unconditional love is never really unconditional. It just means that all the conditions for love have been met, and there's little or nothing that the object of your love can do to ever change that. Just like random acts of kindness, as we pointed out last week, are never really random. If they really are random, then they're senseless. They make no sense. But nobody really means random. There's a reason, there's a purpose, there's something you're expressing, there's more to it than that. So yes, love is the expression of one's values. So when I go around saying, peace and love, man, it's not random. It's not unconditional. But that doesn't mean I have to qualify it in the moment, and neither do you. Because when you go to that big beach party, and when you get the permanent marker and the little paper template to make your lantern and make it say whatever you want, you're surrounded by decent people, and it is not irrational. It is not unjust. It is based on the evidence that's right in front of you to assume that these are decent people. They may not be your kindreds. They might not be your soulmates. They certainly might not be your philosophical evil. But they're just good people. Man, what a great night that was.
Yeah. Yeah. So
now, before I wrap up, I think you had some reflections on that, or?
Well, I mean, maybe you guys can tell us what you think about this in the comments.
Okay.
With regard, I actually came up with a pretty good because I typed in what is peace in YouTube, and you'd probably be able to find the same video, but anyway, this one gentleman's talking about what he thinks peace is and how he thinks it's a choice. So I mean, it's the same kind of thing of serenity, or having confidence in yourself, or being calm, as a choice when things are going awry. And it got me to thinking about Howard Rourke, and how I'd like to go back into the Fountainhead and see where he might actually be talking about that, because Howard Rourke is a really serene person. He doesn't have neurotic inner conflicts.
No, if anybody's got inner peace.
No, but But like a lot of folks do and everything, and he is the ideal man in Ayn Rand's eyes, and he has a real sense of serenity about him, with regard to people that are just not good people who embrace vice rather than virtue. He doesn't think of them. He just doesn't. It doesn't come up for him. Ellsworth Toohey just slipped his mind again, because it doesn't come up for him, because he is so focused on his values. And I thought to myself, while listening to this What is Peace YouTube video and having this person describe it, and the idea of like, if things around you are falling apart, or if you have a loved one who's passing away, or whatever it is, that kind of sense of calm and serenity, and focus on being internally peaceful is a choice, at least to some extent, that you can change. You can't change the things that are around you. As I was talking to Stephen here in the YouTube chat, you really can't. You got to focus on what you can change. Look up the Serenity Prayer. I know it's religious based, but it's a really good.
You just take off the first word.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes,
and
you can think of it in terms of your own self-possession.
Yeah, as I put it, I try to be more concerned with things that I can change in my life. If I focus on the injustices in the world, I do myself an injustice. So if I'm constantly focused on, what's wrong with this person, what's wrong with that person, is it unfair that this person is doing this, and so forth, I'm going to take my focus off of my own life and put it on to somebody who I may not even know. And I have no control over, and I don't even have any influence over. May not even know them. So you need to be just with yourself. You need to be fair to yourself and be selfish. So, yeah. That whole sense of inner peace, because yes. I thought about it some more. I was actually sitting on the back porch of the actual home of Wilbur and Orville Wright, thinking about this today,
yes.
Wearing this hat, and I thought, what brings me inner peace? What brings me that kind of serenity that I need to handle the things that come up? And I thought to myself, it's true, oftentimes I get myself worked up and worried about all sorts of things that are involved in my life, my values, my work, obligations, things that I've made, people I've made promises to. and I think, what's the best way to calm myself down is, number one, to tell myself that, and this is just the best quote that I can come up with at the time was, I don't have to do anything but die. You don't have to. You don't have to do anything but, slowly go into the DNA breakdown and eventually die. But so I can choose. Everything is open to my choice. And in terms of have-tos, try to turn those have-tos into want-tos. Anticipate, things. Love tos, and instead of have tos, and ask yourself what your motivation is in determining what your action is. Are you only doing this because other people are expecting you to? And so you have to get down to, what is the selfish reason I'm doing this? What is my purpose? And then I thought, I think the best. So after you kind of try to hone in on that perspective and gain that kind of attitude of I am the locus of control here, I'm the center of my universe here, then try to reassure yourself that you can prioritize your values. You can ask yourself, what is important? I have all this stuff to do today. What is the most important? And, what's the most important to me? What's the most meaningful and valuable thing to me? And what would I most love to do today? And why? And and then go from there. Go from there. Be the center of your own universe in that way.
So Jim Ashley, it's interesting because he makes in the chat the comment that relates exactly to what I'm looking at right in front of me. He says, everyone should read Ayn Rand's essay, The Metaphysical versus the Man-Made.
Yeah.
Well, those of you who have read it know that she opens the essay with the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And she says this remarkable statement is attributed to a theologian with whose ideas I disagree in every fundamental respect. Reinhold Niebuhr, but omitting the form of a prayer, the implication that one's mental emotional states are a gift from God, that statement is profoundly true as a summary and as a guideline. It names the mental attitude which a rational man must seek to achieve. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. In other words, the serenity to accept the metaphysical, that which is inherent in the nature of things and cannot be changed neither by an act of will nor through action.
Right.
The courage to change the things I can, which means those things that are man-made, those things that are open to human action, and the wisdom to know the difference, which, of course, we learn through experience, but ultimately through philosophy. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And yes, obviously Howard Rourke is not hippy-dippy, but when we talk about serenity, when we talk about peace of mind, when we talk about that self-assurance that comes from having fully accepted oneself, from being happy in one's own soul, Howard Rourke is as good as it gets. That's why I always say I want to be Howard Rourke when I grow up.
Yeah. I would say that Howard Rourke is more of a hippie than a punk rocker.
He's definitely not a punk rocker.
Yeah, where Dominique is definitely a punk rocker.
Dominique's a punk rocker. Yeah.
This theme comes up in our lives often because...
These three pigeonholes that don't really fit most circumstances, but...
Very contextual to the Nacers.
But there are certain kinds of rockers who I find I'm not compatible with. I know I will never have a friendship with a certain kind of hard rocker, for example, or a certain kind of hippie. So I guess it really depends. It's really complicated. Depends. Isn't everything complicated? I was determined to make this a short show today. I just wanted to talk to all of my friends out there, all of you, and say, peace and love, man.
Peace and love, Ringo Starr.
read Ayn Rand's The Roots of War. Listen to Yaron's presentation on the roots of war, because again, he brings it up to date, brings it into the Russia-Ukraine conflict and other conflicts, and talks about it in ways that will make sense to you now in 2022. The Ayn Rand essay holds up just fine on its own, but Yaron's talk about it is very good. Listen to those. And then think about the Serenity Prayer. Think about the fact that we don't live any of that here in the United States, and even in Europe, where they're much more concerned, where they have much more reason to be concerned about the conflict in Ukraine, that being relatively in their back door. Once you understand the roots of war, you realize how far we have come. The fact that we have not had that kind of conflict since the 2003, since the war in Iraq. It's pretty amazing just how good things have gotten, how peaceful things have gotten, how so many people think we're on the brink of World War III or the Second Civil War, or that we've got to spend all of our time fighting the Leviathan, that the state has gotten to the point where nobody should be playing the fiddle while Rome is burning. And yet, good people who are hard at work during the week and getting things done and making things happen can also be at the beach on a Saturday night celebrating peace, celebrating love. No, not in the hippy-dippy sense, in the very real sense. Celebrating their families, celebrating their friends, celebrating having the free time to go out and celebrate their lives. It's a beautiful thing. I hope you all had some of that this weekend. I hope all the mothers out there are feeling some of the love. If my mother happens to be watching, love you, Mom. We talked earlier today, but we'll talk again.
Love you, Sonia.
And with that said, Show notes for the episode will be posted right after the show. We'll do this PDQ real quick because I'm hungry and I want to get to dinner, so I'm going to make that happen immediately. And links to all the things you want to know about, including why today is Have a Coca-Cola Day, and information about VE Day victory in Europe, and all the stuff that we posted, the shows, the Yaron book, and our own podcast. It'll all be there right after the show. If you have suggestions for future episodes, something more substantial than peace and love, man. What is better than peace and love? But if you have suggestions for future shows, please post them in our Facebook group, 5 Minutes with Robert Nasir Facebook group, or in the chat. We will read them, take them to heart. Some of your suggestions have turned into shows. We need more of that to happen. If you'd like to support the show directly, which means financially, the big money, Yaron Brook made another $600 today. Man, if I could make that much every month, can you imagine every week? He makes that every show. If you want to give us a little bit of love, I shouldn't complain because we already get so much love from you. Talking to a friend last night at the Lantern Festival, and he was talking about other shows with more subscribers than ours. He was trying to figure out, how do these people make a living? I thought, well, if they have the kind of rich support base that we do, if they were getting, say, an average of 50 cents per subscriber, like we do, these people would be rich. So the next thing I need to ask you to do after I thank all of you for your patronage, very much appreciated, is like and share the show. If you share the show out, if we get to, I think he gave an example of some young kid with 17,000 subscribers. If we get to the point where we have 17,000 subscribers, well, what would that be? $8,500 a month in patronage. So all we need is the numbers. You don't have to sacrifice. Just send the show out to your friends. See if you can get them to hit that subscribe button. They don't have to listen to every show. Just hit that button. Thank you so much. So many of you have already done that. Very much appreciated.
Yes.
The show is growing slowly but surely. We just want to amp it up. And with that said, we wish you, it's kind of obvious what we're going to wish you this week. We wish you peace. And no, not hippy-dippy peace, but peace of mind. Serenity of spirit. We know most of you have already got that. It's so great to be friends with so many of you on Facebook, on Twitter.
And in real life, too.
And finally to have met so many of you in the UK and through our other travels, meeting people in Austin. We know you've got the peace. You've got the peace. And it's not hippy-dippy peace. It is well-earned personal serenity. We do wish you the love, especially today on Mother's Day. We hope that you are getting it. So we will see you in 1 week. See, we did it. We kept it short. Look how short this show is. Thank you so much for joining us. We will make it happen again soon. Love to all of you.